She listened until the fan went off and she heard Scott going into the lounge. Now she could go back to sleep. She closed her eyes, then jolted awake again as the sound of screaming filled the flat. It took her a few seconds to realise Scott was watching a horror film. Great! Fan-bloody-tastic! She reached out for the other pillow and stuck it over her head. The trouble with this flat was every noise carried, and Scott made a lot of noise. Oh, please don't let him be disturbing the neighbours, she thought. They'd already had a couple of complaining letters shoved under their door. Somehow, Holly managed to drift back off to sleep and was woken by the alarm 4 hours later to find Scott's half of the bed unslept in and the TV in the lounge still blaring. Exhausted, she stumbled out of bed and into the bathroom. She was going to need a very strong cup of coffee before she went to work today. Holly showered, dressed, put on her makeup, and walked into the lounge to find Scott still fast asleep on the sofa. She paused to look at him. Even with his mouth open, his top button undone, his clothes askew, he looked incredibly sexy. That was the trouble. Scott was so handsome, and he knew it. He only had to gaze at her with those deep blue eyes and smile, and her heart crumbled. She loved him so much. But right now, she was angry with him too, and she damn well wasn't going to tiptoe around him. He had all day to sleep while she had to work. She stomped past him and into the kitchen, banging cupboards, doors, and utensils about as she made a cup of coffee and bowl of muesli. But Scott didn't even stir. Holly resisted the urge to pour a glass of water over his head. Instead, she just wrote a note. Gone to work, see you tonight, and went out, feeling a bit out of sorts that she hadn't even got a goodbye kiss off him. If she hadn't been so angry, she'd have kissed him on the forehead and whispered goodbye. Well, he'd better be sober and guilty enough to cook a slap-up I'm sorry meal for her when she came home that evening. Chapter 2. Holly made her way to the car park at the back of the block of flats and pressed the remote button to open the doors of her yellow Mini. Pops had bought the car for her when she finally passed her driving test. It had taken 5 attempts and a bottle of rescue remedy. The boot was already packed with the books and other odds and ends she'd collected yesterday from Pops's little bungalow. She'd had the day off work, so she and her mum had finally plucked up the courage to go and empty the bungalow, ready for it to be sold. There was already a buyer waiting. They'd both been really sad as they'd gone through Pops's and Nana's things. Pops had refused to let any of Nana's stuff go when she had died, and they had ended up crying in each other's arms. You'll probably have your share of the money in 2 or 3 months, Mum had told Holly as she dried her eyes. We'll all get just over £30,000. Have you decided what you want to do with it yet? Holly had shaken her head. She was used to being skint and still couldn't believe that Pops had left her a share of the money from the sale of his bungalow, along with Mum, Uncle Tim, and the Royal British Legion. £30,000 was an amazing amount of money, and she wanted to spend it wisely. Nana and I want you to use it to make your dreams come true, Holly, Pops had written in the letter he'd left her. You've looked after me and your Nana for years. Now it's time to think of yourself a bit. Holly's eyes had filled with tears when she'd read it. She'd loved spending time with Pops and Nana. They had always looked after her when she was younger, so she thought it was her turn to look after them as they got older. It was her love for them that had urged her to get a job in Sunshine Lodge Care Home when she left art college, so she could earn a living looking after other old folks while continuing with her artwork in her spare time. You haven't told Scott, have you? Mum had asked. Not yet. When Pops's solicitor had told them about their inheritance, Mum had made Holly promise not to tell Scott about it for at least a couple of weeks. Pops left that money for you, Holly, not for Scott. Take your time and think about what you would like to do with it, she'd pleaded.